Alrighty, guys, Superman has kicked off the DCU, but we have a whole lot more in store for us in the coming months, in the coming years, actually in the coming month, singular, as Peacemaker Season 2 is on the horizon. However, I think post-Superman, it's what might be just as interesting as the build-up anticipation to the DCU's arrival. And yes, we're not forgetting Creature Commandos, but really, let's not kid ourselves. Superman was the real start to the DCU. The James Gunn's rebooted DCU, rebooting the Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot DCEU into this new David Cornsweet DCU. But anyways, the post-Superman era, I think, is going to be much more interesting, not much more interesting, but just as interesting as the pre-Superman era because of all the post-mortems, all the different things that we can glean from the film, the box office results, which we talked about last week, and or this week, rather. Yeah, this week in the Access Blockbusters Pod. All the dates are getting mixed up with me. But the reviews have been really positive, and fan responses and how people are taking the DCU. And so a Variety article has come out here and discusses a lot of things. Now, the headline of this segment and a lot of news articles are pointing to two very specific things, but honestly, I would recommend that if you're interested at all in the analysis of Superman and sort of the behind the scenes, what people are responding to, what people are interested in, what people are even angry about, I would recommend reading this article. We're not going to dive into every single thing here. For example, the article touches on the conflict in the Middle East as there is a parallel in the film and points out the fact that James Gunn actually turned in his script before October 2023. So anyways, there's a lot of really interesting things here about just how people are receiving the film. Obviously, there's been some discourse about the fact that this is, Superman is an immigrant in the film. So a lot of interesting things. If you are so inclined to read the article, that is all in there. We are not going to dive into that in this segment, not because I don't care about those things, but because this is not the channel we're not really discussing those kinds of topics on in this channel. But again, I would highly recommend reading this article. It is a very interesting read. Anyways, all that to say, there are, like we said, a couple nuggets in this article that people have been pointing to as potentially revealing a couple things. So first of all, it's important to point out that these two little nuggets in this article are kind of buried. One might be tempted to say, well, is it really reporting? Can we really make an entire segment out of this? Can we really talk about this as if it's concrete? And the answer to that is, well, we're not going to take anything as concrete until DC comes out and says it, although we did a segment last week where James Gunn did talk about the Batman Part 2 script, but Variety is one of those news sources when you're talking about movie news that is one of the more reputable sources. Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, The Wrap, etc. Those sources, when they say things, they are usually spot on with their sources. And so the two things that are coming out of this article from Variety, and the title, if you want to check it out, is "A New Day for DC: Breaking Down Superman's Salaries, Budgets, and More as Studio Fast Tracks Wonder Woman and the Future." And so one of those things is in the title. They are fast tracking Wonder Woman, and we'll talk about that in just a second. The other thing is that not just James Gunn, because James Gunn, we talked about last week, is thrilled, it seems like, or he says that the Batman 2 script is great, is what he said. It was a very quick passing comment if you watch the actual clip, he just answers, it's great, and then he walks away. So not a whole lot to glean from that, but still, it's encouraging that he liked it. But this article from Variety seems to indicate that the entire studio is behind the script, meaning everybody on board seemed to be very much thrilled with the script itself. That is a good thing. That is a very good thing. So let's get that part out of the way. The Batman Part 2 script, people seem to be really excited about it. Actually, Colin Farrell, we're not doing an entire script, or not an entire segment about this, because he's really reiterating a lot of things that we've already heard of. Oh yeah, they might be doing Penguin Season 2 and I'd be interested, and I haven't read the script yet for Batman Part 2, is essentially what Colin Farrell just said. But he also did say that Matt Reeves is such a gifted writer, and he's super excited to get to be able to sit down and read the script. And it seems like the studio is thrilled with it. Now, there's been a lot of discourse, right? In our segment last week where we talked about James Gunn being happy with the Batman Part 2 script, there was a lot of discourse in the comments about the fact that people were wondering, is Pattinson's Batman still going to be a part of the DCU, or is it going to be separate? And my stance with this, I've done entire segments about this, is still that it is not a good idea to put Pattinson in the DCEU. I just think let Reeves' universe be Reeves' universe, and let the DCU cast its own Batman. I think it would be fine. I point out, because people point out to me, they say to me, well, people are going to get confused, if there's two Batmen running around. To which I respond, in 2023, there were 3 Batmen in 2 universes running around. Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck in the DCEU, and Pattinson as well. So, I mean, again, I just don't really buy the argument that people are going to be confused if there's multiple different iterations. But anyways, I digress. So it looks like they're very excited regardless for the Batman Part 2, and we will see where that goes. And the other thing to talk about here is that they are fast-tracking Wonder Woman. Now, the DCU is operating a little bit differently because Marvel doesn't necessarily fast-track projects, right? Comparing the MCU to the DCU. They have a plan. They have a set plan. And while it seems like they're starting to be a little more flexible, especially with TV shows, they don't, they know that Spider-Man 4 is happening. They know that Shang-Chi 2 is happening. They know that Black Panther 3 is happening. But it's not as if all of a sudden they get, this idea for Squirrel Girl, and all of a sudden Squirrel Girl is going to get fast-tracked. If it doesn't fit in the plans, and we don't know if Kevin Feige's, behind the scenes, right? Maybe he would see a really compelling Squirrel Girl script. It's just an example. And it fits in with the plans for the MCU moving forward. It fits in with the X-Men movie. And he's like, great, we're going to fast track it. But it seems like he rarely does that. With James Gunn, it seems like the writing and the script is priority. And if they have an idea, and also it seems like David Zaslav and Warner Brothers are really pushing for the trinity of DC characters, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, to come back to the big screen. Because if you remember, in the initial announcement for the DCU for Gods and Monsters Chapter 1, James Gunn did not announce Wonder Woman. He announced Paradise Lost, an HBO show set on Themyscira. And so now it looks like they're really shifting their priorities towards, let's get Wonder Woman going. It seems like if this is the case, then they have a script, and that's one of the reasons why they're fast-tracking the movie. So I think that this is a good thing, and I think it's an exciting thing. I think that if they are prioritizing Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, as long as we get really solid iterations of the three, which I think we're 1/3 of the way there. I enjoyed David Cornsweet very much, and I think that we'll have to see how that plays. I mean, again, we didn't think Clayface was going to be coming in 2026. Lo and behold, Clayface will be the third DCU movie. So it all just depends, I think, on what James Gunn finds interesting and what he finds compelling at a given time. And we'll have to see if Wonder Woman pans out after being fast-tracked as one of the projects for the DCU in the near future. So guys, what do you make of these comments from Variety that the DCU is fast-tracking Wonder Woman, and it is, or rather the studio is, thrilled with the Batman Part 2 script? Let me know in the comments down below.